So we're gonna go over this video. It's a 30-minute section that we're gonna watch. I'm gonna try not to turn a 30-minute video into a 2-hour video, but we'll see how that goes. I have some commentary I want to add on this and stuff. So I'm just gonna dive right in because I've been having a rough day.
There is something nobody really prepares you for when you start creating content. You think the hard part is going to be making the content, coming up with ideas, learning how to edit, figuring out thumbnails, trying to understand an algorithm that seems to change its mind every 15 minutes, getting people to actually watch the things you spent 6 hours making. And sure, all of that can be difficult. But eventually, you can run into something that has absolutely nothing to do with your content. It's your community. More specifically, the relationship between you and the people who consume what you make. Because there is a strange line that exists between being a creator and being a person who consumes content online. You want your audience to feel welcome. You want them to feel like they know you. You want your community to feel like a community. And honestly, that's one of the best parts of being a creator. But sometimes that relationship can become something else entirely. And when the boundaries between creator, entertainer, friend, moderator, therapist, and emotional support human start disappearing, things can get complicated and messy very quickly. So, today, while I build what is probably the most psychologically appropriate Pal World base I could possibly build right now, a prison, we're going to talk about parasocial relationships, creator boundaries, community culture, burnout, and what happens when the community you built starts becoming something you can no longer sustain.
Okay. I'm gonna pause here for a second. So yeah, you're getting the gist of like what this video is gonna be about. And I wanted to highlight this and kind of provide some commentary on this because we're approaching the year mark of my 1 year anniversary. And it's something that I have learned a lot in the last year. When I first started out, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I still kind of don't know what I'm doing. I'm kind of figuring it out, and that's okay. But generally speaking, when it comes to a lot of technical stuff, I was still kind of figuring things out. I was getting advice from friends on how to like put my chat on screen, for example. Doing a lot of things, right? And kind of figuring things out. Like I just now finally have a starting screen and an ending screen that's specific to my character because it took time and money for me to be able to save up enough to get those things. These are not things that everybody has a chance to start out with, and that's okay. Everybody does stuff at their own pace. That's perfectly fine. But I feel like this video, which has only been out for like a day, but I feel like this video really, really does a great job of explaining that people need to remember that content creators are people too. And you can support someone without expecting that you own a piece of that person. No matter if you're somebody who's been supporting that content creator since the beginning, you're somebody who has spent, $50 in their entire experience of their streaming, or $500. At the end of the day, how you choose to support your streamer is up to you, and that's fine. But that doesn't give you entitlement to what pieces of that streamer you own. And there's unfortunately a really parasocial negative side of that that's not only in a community, because that can happen, but also other content creators with other content creators. And that's something that I wanted to address because a lot of the things that she talks about, I've experienced with other content creators. And they're usually people who might have started off in a community that eventually became friends with the content creator, especially if it's a small content creator. And then they start doing content together. And then those boundaries that she talks to shortly start to erode. And the things that that content creator used to allow tend to wear on that person's patience because now you're not treating that person with respect. You're treating that person like, what can you get out of that content creator? And unfortunately, yes, that's something that has happened to me Um, and while I won't go into like the specifics and the drama about it, there are examples of all of this that I will probably be vague about because I'm not going to be calling people out, but the people who watch my shit know who they are. But at the end of the day, there's this expectation of how do you go from supporting your community and supporting your creators and supporting your fellow friends without crossing that boundary of what's okay and what's not okay. And this is a good video that kind of expresses that. And we'll kind of have commentary about
First, I want to clear something up. Parasocial relationships aren't automatically bad. They're actually a pretty normal part of consuming media. You watch someone regularly, you become familiar with their personality, you recognize their voice, you know their jokes, you might genuinely care about what happens to them, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. According to Science Direct, research on parasocial relationships has found that they can actually have positive effects, including feelings of connection, community, coping, and identity exploration. But they can also create problems when the relationship starts being treated as more reciprocal than it actually is. Because here's the fundamental difference. You might know a creator, but the creator doesn't necessarily know you. Even if they recognize your username, even if they've talked to you hundreds of times, even if you've been around for years, there is still an asymmetry in that relationship, and that doesn't make the relationship fake, but it does make it different.
And here's something I want to add onto that. Just because you support a content creator, just because you've been there since the beginning, just because you never miss any of their streams and you pay attention to their Discord and their community stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean you know that content creator personally. That does not mean you know that content creator personally. It means that you support them and you want to see them achieve their goals, and that's good. That's fantastic. That's not an issue. But there's also this expectation that if I've watched you from the beginning, I know you more than other people. But that's not the case because, especially for VTubers and for other streamers, like live action streamers, who they are on camera, it's the same way with like actors and stuff, right? You can have a fondness for an actor, and that person might be a piece of shit. You don't know. You might see an actor that is really, really good at playing a bitch or an asshole or some other villain, and you love their characterization, but they themselves are a great person. It's about having a role, right? But the thing is just because you support an actor or a community, just because you support an actor or a content creator or a streamer, that doesn't mean that you inherently know that person personally. And the problem is when you have that expectation that, oh, well, I've been around since the beginning, I know that person, you're not supporting them at that point. You think you're entitled to them, that you own a piece of them. And no, it's not how that works.
The problem starts when that difference disappears. When a viewer goes from, I really enjoy this creator, to, this creator owes me something. I've spent money on this creator. And that's where things can become unhealthy. And here's something I think that gets overlooked too often. Being a small creator can actually make parasocial boundaries harder, not easier.
Absolutely.
When you're small, you recognize people.
Mm-hmm.
You recognize the names coming into chat. You remember their stories. You know what games they like. You might talk to the same people every single stream. And that's honestly awesome. It's wonderful. That's the part of streaming that made a lot of us fall in love with it. But it also creates a feeling of closeness. And when the community is small enough, the creator can start feeling like they have a personal relationship with everybody. And that's where the lines can start getting blurry. Because if you have 20 people watching you, it feels completely reasonable to know those 20 people.
And that's the thing. Being a part of a small community can be a double-edged sword. You can have that closeness with your community and your content creator, but you always have to understand that that content creator is still one person. Whether you are a community of 5 people that come regularly, 50 people that come regularly, or 500. At the end of the day, that content creator is still only one person. No matter how big or small they are, they're still only one person. And they're still a living human being with their own feelings and anxieties and stresses and IRL things that you might not be aware of. And it's not appropriate to pry into that and to ask questions about that if the streamer is not willing to share it. Some content creators are perfectly willing to share certain aspects of their life because that's their connection with their community, and that's fine. But you also have to understand that just because a content creator shares pieces of their life with you does not mean you are entitled to those pieces of their life, if that makes sense.
But then those 20 people can start feeling like they know you. And if you've spent months or years being incredibly accessible, suddenly becoming less accessible can feel like rejection. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because the relationship has inherently changed. And change can be really uncomfortable. There's another part of this that I don't think viewers always see. Creating content is not just creating content. It's the invisible work around the content.
And there's
It's
so
moderation.
much.
It's answering messages, it's Discord, social media, it's managing conflict, remembering birthdays and special occasions. It's responding to people who are having a bad day. It's trying to make everybody feel included. It's reading and answering comments. It's watching analytics. It's worrying about whether people are enjoying themselves. It's figuring out whether someone is upset with you. It's trying to maintain the atmosphere of your community.
It's
And
exhausting.
then, after you've done all that, you're supposed to sit down and make entertaining content. Research actually has a name for some of this. It's called relational labor. Sage Journal says that a 2024 study by researcher Zoe Glatt looked at the experiences of 30 content creators and found that creators are encouraged to cultivate intimacy and maintain relationships with their audience as part of their work. The study specifically examined the emotional and relational labor involved in managing those relationships and setting up boundaries.
This also goes to say that, like, it's not just they're expected to do this with their community as a content creator. Unless you are a content creator who only does stuff by yourself, never collabs with anybody else, you're expected to do that same kind of effort and energy into your co-streaming people, like the people you stream with, your collab partners, your co-gamers, like just stuff in general. And it then becomes an even bigger situation, because now you're not only you're not only maintaining your own community, you are then becoming a guest in somebody else's community. And then that other content creator, even if it's like you and one other person, if it's you and one other person, if it's you and 5 other people, you have all these webs, and you have to be mindful of the fact that your community might not mesh with another person's community. Your community might get off like fire with another person's community. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you have to kind of realize that communities with content creators are kind of like little mini individual neighborhoods, or like little mini kingdoms. I hate to use the term kingdom, but it makes a lot of sense. Your content creator is the person who sets the pace, who makes the rules, who decides how they want to do things. And you, as the community, are not only supporting that creator, but that creator is building this neighborhood, this kingdom, this community with you, the consumer. But there still has to be a understanding that, like, you're still getting something out of it, and they're still getting something out of it, and what it should not be this expectation of, well, I'm entitled to this person's time, energy, and stuff like that. But then when you have to add other communities to it, it can be incredibly stressful on another streamer, because they might just be having a good time and wanting to play games, and their community might not like the other person's community, and suddenly they feel like they can't play games with their friend because their community won't like it or the other person's community won't like it. And at the end of the day, you guys gotta calm the fuck down. It's not the end of the world if your content creator wants to go play games with other people. That's okay. Like, let them live their life.
In other words, the relationship itself can become part of the job. And that's a pretty enormous thing to ask of one singular person. And this is where things start to get interesting, because communities don't usually test boundaries by announcing, "Hello, I'm about to violate your boundaries." It's usually much more subtle and much smaller than that. Can you make an exception this once? "Hey, why don't you do this thing anymore? You know you used to." "Oh, but we're friends, right?" "Oh, I thought you cared about us. Why can't you just..."
These are manipulative
And
tactics, by the way.
individually, those things might not seem like a big deal, but that's the problem. Boundaries usually don't disappear all at once. They erode, one exception at a time, one uncomfortable conversation at a time, one apology from the creator at a time, and eventually the exception becomes the expectation. One way a community can test a creator is through access. "Why didn't you respond?" "Why didn't you see my message?" "Why didn't you say hi to me?" "Why didn't you come into Discord for this?" "Hey, why aren't you available?" "Why does your message always say, 'Do not disturb'?"
Okay. I wanted to make a point on this because this happens not only with communities, but this also happens with other collab, co-streamers and co-content creators, I guess you could say. This can happen with other people you play games with. This can happen with other people you stream with. And the problem becomes when it's not okay for your community, but you make exceptions for the people that you stream with because, you know, they're not your community, they're your coworkers. And the thing to remember is you are just as much entitled to peace of mind and being able to take care of yourself than having to be everybody else's mom or everybody else's dad or everybody else's manager and stuff like that. Because yeah, this happened to me where I had people that I would do content with, and it became a matter of it no longer became fun because there was this expectation of, well, are you going to invite me to things? Are you going to plan things for me? Are you going to do this for me? Are you going to do that for me? And it started small at first, and then it became more, more, more. And I I would still talk about to this person about that's not okay. I'm not here to do things for you. You need to kind of do things on your own. If I'm running a collab for myself and it's my event, I'm going to invite people. That's fine. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not excluding anybody. But if I'm a participant in a collab and I am a guest in somebody else's event, I'm not going to invite somebody to an event that I'm not running. That's to me, that's rude and that's inconsiderate. Now, if you know, content creator X is doing an event and I'm participating in it, I might tell people, "Oh, hey, so and so is doing an event. Reach out to them if you want to be invited," because it might be an open event. That might be the case. That might be fine, but it's still your responsibility to reach out to that person. It is not okay to expect your friends to do it for you, which is what happened a lot, which is why I started getting frustrated because my boundaries were slowly being disintegrated where I kept making I kept doing it because it was just easier. And then it became a habit and then it became a constant. And when I finally got fed up with it, yeah, I lashed out because I can only take so much before I snap. That's unfortunately something I'm aware of and I'm trying to work on it, but it's not going to be an instant fix. It's something that I know is something is the problem with me. But the thing is I'm not somebody's mom. I'm not somebody's, well, I'm Zed's wife, but that's about it. But I'm not your mom. I'm not your wife. I'm not your boss. I'm not your I don't know what else I can come up with. I'm not your babysitter. Um, I can give you the tools, but you still have to be the one to do it yourself. And what I found is that sometimes people will come to expect it. It's just what they're used to. So they don't want to put in that extra effort. So when you put in when you have those boundaries and you're like, I've already said this multiple times, it's frustrating to me because you're not hearing me. That's how friendships can erode. Because if you feel like you're constantly being taken advantage of, whether or not you might not be, that's not the point. If you feel like you are talking to a brick wall and nothing is getting through, eventually you're going to stop talking to that brick wall. And this is to say that like this happens with content creators with each other, because when you're a part of a community, there's certain rules and you'll never really interact with people as much except for when you are doing when you're doing an event and you're doing a content and you're like entertaining them, you're interacting with chat. You might decide if somebody says something in chat that you don't want to address because it's inappropriate, you can ignore it. That's not something they can force you to acknowledge. But if you're in a stream with someone and this is somebody who you play, you've done content with and stuff, sometimes it becomes awkward for not only your community, but their community as well. If they're pushing boundaries that have slowly but surely been wearing over time. And those kind of things require conversations. And that's not to say conversations don't happen. It's when those conversations aren't listened to and those pieces of information are not adhered to that you'll have friendships erode over time, because it's human nature to eventually be like, if I'm going to keep talking to a wall and not get anywhere, I'm going to move on. That's just how that is.
And eventually the creator starts thinking, maybe I should respond so they don't feel ignored. And then the creator thinks, maybe I should explain why I didn't respond. Then maybe I shouldn't leave messages unanswered anymore. And suddenly being available isn't a choice, it's an obligation. Another thing is emotional responsibility. Someone has had a bad day. They're upset, they're angry, they're lonely, they're going through something, and because you're the person they've chosen to watch, you become the person they're bringing it to.
This also still happens with other
And again, there's
streamers.
nothing wrong with having a community that's supportive of one another. That's part of what makes communities wonderful. But there is a difference between my community supported me today and my creator is responsible for keeping me emotionally okay.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the biggest takeaway from this is content creators are not therapists. And whether you're a member of a community that treats your content creator like your therapist, or you're a friend who treats your friend like a therapist, there's a difference between wanting to support your friends because that's what friendship is. And then there's a difference between feeling like you are basically the emotional pack mule because that person can't handle it. There are professionals who literally are trained to be able to do this. They go to school for these things. Therapists are there for a reason. And it's one thing to want your creator to support you through going through a rough time, because sometimes they might they might have advice that kind of meshes with it. Like, I am a domestic violence survivor, so there are times where somebody might talk about something that's in that genre, that wheel of domestic violence, and I will offer my input on what I went through to try to help somebody kind of realize that like they're not alone, and kind of get the support they need to kind of find the tools that that they can get them out of there, because that happens. But that's not just for like one thing, that's stuff in general. And that's fine if it's the context of the conversation that's being brought up. But if you're going into a stream and going into a chat, regardless of whether you are just a regular consumer of that content, you're just a regular community member, or you're a friend who is in that close circle of that content creator, and then now you are, oh, so and so is not giving me attention, so and so's not inviting me to things, so and so I'm having a rough day, and so isn't answering what answering my message and stuff. That's really exhausting, because you can be supportive of your friends but not be their therapist. And that goes to say with the same thing with like community chats. When somebody comes in and they're like, oh, well, I'm having a really rough day, and it drags the entire feel of the stream down. It's okay to have those conversations when those conversations are warranted. But if a streamer acknowledges your bad day and is talking to you about it to try to cheer you up, it's your responsibility to understand that they're not here to professionally fix you. They can be supportive, they can be empathetic, and that's fine. But if you continue to dwell on it because you're not getting the immediate fix that you want, you're now putting your weight on their shoulders, and they have enough going on,
That second one is an enormous burden to put on another human being. And creators can fall into it because we genuinely do care. We don't want someone to hurt. We don't want somebody to feel ignored or passed over. We don't want someone to leave feeling worse than when they arrived. So inherently, we try to fix it. And then eventually, we're fixing everyone except for ourselves. Then there's loyalty testing.
Which is another
You've
manipulation.
changed. You don't care about us anymore. You used to do this. Why are you playing that instead? Why are you hanging out with those people? Why are you changing the community? Sometimes these things are simply someone expressing that they don't like a change, and that's okay. Viewers are allowed to dislike your new direction. But when disappointment becomes pressure, that's when it becomes a problem. Because eventually the creator starts asking, what do I actually want? Versus, what will everyone let me get away with changing? And those are two extremely different questions. And then here's one of the biggest things, the culture. Communities develop their own culture. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes completely and totally accidentally. A joke becomes a tradition. Isn't that right? Chat, chat, chat. A behavior becomes normal. A particular type of conversation becomes expected. Certain rules become understood without ever being written down, and eventually, the community has an identity of its own.
Okay. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing, because like if your content creator is okay with talking about certain contexts of stuff and then later changes down the line, it might be something that is jarring because you're used to talking about something and suddenly they're not. But you can't treat it like you're entitled to that if that person doesn't want to talk about it anymore, because they can kick you out of they can kick you out of the community if you do not respect the boundaries that they're putting down. And they have every right to do it. You can whine, you can bitch, you can moan, you can be unhappy about it. But at the end of the day, it's their choices, their decisions. It might be something that they are willing to talk about that you might not want to talk about, you might not want to hear. You have every right to leave the channel too, because nobody is holding you hostage to watch a content creator. And it's something that not everybody is going to share the same opinion on something. There are going to be some opinions that people just don't agree with, and that's okay. There used to be a time, long time ago in the before times, where it was okay to have different opinions. It was okay to agree to disagree with someone and still respect them as a person, because not everybody's going to have the same opinion. That doesn't necessarily always happen anymore. And there's a difference between wanting to be respectful of people and just being an asshole for the sake of being an asshole. And yeah, that can be a problem.
Which sounds great on paper until the creator changes, because creators change. We grow. Our interests change. Our priorities change. The things that we tolerate change. And our boundaries change. And sometimes the culture that worked for us 2 years ago doesn't work anymore. Because creators are people too, and we change.
and we grow.
This
That's
is
okay.
where I think creators can start to get trapped. Because you can find yourself maintaining a culture that you don't actually want anymore. You might have created a community around one type of content, one personality, one set of expectations, one set of rules. And then one day you realize, I don't want to do this anymore. But there's a problem. Your audience remembers the old version of you. They remember what you used to do. They remember what you used to allow. They remember how accessible you used to be. And some people will absolutely understand when things need to change.
And that's a really, really important thing to understand. If you're a content creator, no matter whether you are a member of a community, whether you're a member of other content creators and they're your friends, a content creator will always grow. Whether it's small, whether it's huge, they're always adapting and finding new ways to kind of figure out their niche. And if you truly support them, you should be willing to grow with them. You might grow out of interest with them. Like if there's somebody who I will use the example of somebody who maybe used to do WoW content all the time, World of Warcraft all the time, nothing but World of Warcraft. And then, maybe they're unhappy with the way that the game has become. So they want to pivot into a different kind of game that they love because they're no longer enjoying the WoW content. It's become a chore. So they want to pivot and do something else that has that same spark for them. They still like playing games. They still like the content. They still like the commentary. And it's okay if you as a viewer or you as a fellow content creator might not enjoy that content. You should be supporting that person regardless of whether or not you agree with their content. You don't have to view every single stream somebody makes if it's not the kind of content you want. That's fine. But you can still be supportive without coming along and being, oh, well, you don't do this anymore. You used to do this. Why don't? No, get out of here with that. That's selfish. That's childish. And if you can't support the people that you claim to want to support, whether they are your content creator or somebody you watched or they are your friend, then you need to acknowledge that what you expect out of somebody is not a healthy dynamic. Because then you're no longer looking at this person of, oh, this person is entertaining. I like their content. I like their humor. I like whatever about them. Suddenly it's this person's not giving me what I want. And again, you do not own that person, whether you are a viewer, whether you are a friend, whether you are whatever you are in the close bonds of creator sphere that it is. You don't own that person just as much as they don't own a piece of you and you don't own a piece of your community. Basically, it has to be a mutual benefit of we're here to enjoy this together. And if it's something that doesn't mesh for us, that's fine. Good luck. And I wish you the best, but I'm going to go and watch this other content creator because I like that content. That's okay. And we as content creators also need to be okay that if we no longer want to do content and somebody decides to go elsewhere, we can't hold that against that person. If you are somebody that plays Marvel Rivals all the time and you decide that you don't want to play Marvel Rivals anymore because Marvel Rivals can be toxic and you decide you want to take a break from that, you can't hold it against your community who is used to you doing that and deciding that they want to, maybe not watch you as much and go watch someone else because they're still doing that. That's fine. They have the right to do that. And at the same time, as a community, as fellow content creators, you shouldn't be going into that person's community and being like, oh, well, you don't do this anymore, so I'm going to go find somebody else who does. That's rude. That's disrespectful. Get the fuck out with that stuff.
But then some won't. And that's okay. The difficult part is accepting that people leaving doesn't necessarily mean you failed. Sometimes it means the community is changing. Sometimes it means you've outgrown each other.
And here's the biggest thing I want to add on to that. If somebody decides to leave, it is not up to you to make them stay. If they want to leave, they're going to leave. That's fine. But you as a content creator cannot take it personally. Whether it's your fellow content creators aren't not doing as much content with you anymore because they're doing something else instead, you can't take that personally. Same thing with like a community. If you're no longer doing the content that they want to watch and they want to go elsewhere, you as a content creator cannot take that personally, because it's not the end of the world, honestly, at the end of the day.
And sometimes it means you're finally making something that is healthier for you as a content creator. And this is where the prison metaphor comes in. Because eventually, the creator becomes trapped by their own community that they created. Not physically, not literally, but psychologically. You start thinking about what you can say, what can you play, what you can change, who might be upset, who might leave, who might complain, and who might misunderstand. You think about who might think that you've changed, and you start modifying yourself before anyone even asks you to. You censor yourself. You avoid playing games with your friends that you love. You change your plans. You avoid certain behaviors. You stop experimenting.
At the end of the day, the biggest thing to take on this is don't do this. Do not do this. If you are somebody who feels like you have to bend over backwards for your community, it might be a good idea to decide if that community is the community for you. And it might be a difficult decision to go through and try to rebuild it from the bottom up. That's okay. Sometimes there is structures that are not sound in how they're built, that they need to be rebuilt by something stronger. And that takes time, that takes energy. It is very fucking frustrating and very exhausting. But it'll be worth it in the long run, because you're building something to last, as opposed to bending over backwards for people on the internet. That's the thing you have to understand. I'm a person on the internet. My community is a person. My community are people on the internet. The people you play games with, the people you stream with, they're all people on the internet. At the end of the day, everybody has the right to be themselves, whether you agree with them or not. That's going to be its own thing. But if you feel like you have to change who you are as a person to make your community happy, you're not the one in control of your community anymore. Your community's in control of you. That's not okay. That's not healthy. There's no way in which that's healthy. Do not do that. If you feel like that is what is happening, do not do that. Find people who support you. Find people who you trust. Have those difficult conversations. But understand that that might mean that you might have to restructure things. And if that means that you have to get rid of the weight of a community that is holding you back, and that can happen, then that is okay. Because at the end of the day, you are the person that is making those goals. You are the person that is making those decisions. You are the person that is the king or queen of your own little castle when it comes to streaming. And I'm not saying that in that everybody needs to act like, they're the ones in charge, they make all the decisions, blah, blah. But have enough confidence in yourself to have faith in what you want to do. Because you are one person. Let's say hypothetically you have a community of 100 people. If you are trying to make 100 people happy, you're not going to make yourself happy. But if you are doing what you are happy with, and you are confident that what you're doing is the best that you can do, and you are satisfied with it, you might not have 100 people that might enjoy it. There might only be 30 people that enjoy it. There might only be 20 people that enjoy it. But those people will be more, that honesty and that connection will be so much healthier for you as a person than by making whatever to make the other 80 people happy. Because they're not going to be happy, because people like that are never happy.
You stop taking risks. You stop making the content you actually want to make. You stop having fun because you're trying to preserve something. And at some point, as a creator, you have to ask yourself, am I building a community, or am I maintaining a prison? And This isn't just something creators are imagining. There's actual research showing that creator burnout is a serious problem. According to Later, who surveyed more than 600 creators about social media burnout, they found that 49% of creators were categorized as experiencing high social media burnout, with another 30% categorized as average and 21% as low. This is important because it shows that burnout isn't some bizarre failure of a handful of creators. It's a widespread problem in the creator space. According to Science Direct, in 2024, a study examined 19 Instagram creators and found that these creators were experiencing stress around performance metrics, particularly the pressure to reach certain levels of likes and interactions. The researchers also found that stress from social media could spill over into the creators' personal, offline, real world relationships.
And here's the thing, though, too. It's not just the performance, the constantly performing. This stuff can also happen with your friendships with other people. If you have disagreements, if you don't see eye to eye on something, when you have those stresses and those anxieties, those things can build up and bubble over, and it'll have the same effect, because now it's not just your community that you feel like you might be letting down. You might be having issues with your friends and not really knowing how to kind of bridge the gap to have those communication to be able to fix the fixable problems that are there. Because I am a firm believer that there's always going to miscommunication happens all the time, no matter what it is. And as long as you try to communicate and understand both sides, like, you are going to understand your own side because it's coming from you. If you're trying to understand the other person's side and they're trying to understand your side, you're going to kind of meet in the middle, and that's ideally what you want to do. But if you're somebody who believes that you are right and everybody else is wrong, or you believe that you're not being heard because that other person is just not listening to you, it will be stressful, because then you tend to overthink, okay, well, how is it going to be with this person if I do this collab with them, or if I participate in this Discord call with them, or if I do this and that, because that kind of tension spills over. And you see this with all the goddamn Google Docies that drop every other day, all the goddamn time. And sometimes they're valid things of, like, warning people about predators, warning people about, shady practices and stuff like that. That's good. We should always be able to, like, warn each other about that. But then you'll have people who will drop a Google document because somebody got their feelings hurt. And at the end of the day, people need to grow the fuck up. If you are trying to do a business, and this is what it is, you are being an entertainer, you are providing content, you're providing value, whether it's commentary, whether it's humor, whether it's games, whatever it might be, you are a business of that sort. You need to be somewhat respectable and somewhat professional, in the sense where you need to be civil enough to get along with people. And if it becomes a point where, okay, I cannot do this content with this person anymore, you need to be able to be willing to realize that it might be healthier for you and perhaps them to separate from that intertwining community. And the problem is, it seems to be harder when it's other content creators, because your community might come to expect you to do stuff with people. Their community might come to expect you to be in their stuff. And it's difficult to be like, well, so-and-so and I don't agree anymore, so we're not spending time together. Because people forget that people are still people, and not everybody is going to agree. And that's okay. That's human nature. But at the same time, you still have to take care of yourself and your mental health. You cannot take care of your own self. You cannot take care of your community. You cannot take care of other people's communities if you are not happy with yourself and your mental health at the end of the day. And so burnout can be a problem, not just with, like, the stuff that you're doing if your community you feel is demanding, but like the people you do content with can also contribute to that burnout.
So imagine adding the audience's relationship on top of that. You're worrying about the views, about money, you're worrying about the algorithm, and you're stressing about your next upload, and you're wondering whether people are enjoying your stream.
On top of which, like, I almost forgot to mention, on top of which, there are people who will see other content creators, their circles and their friends as like people to just play games with. And that's great. That's healthy. That's fantastic. Those are the kinds of friendships you want to participate with. But then you'll also have content creators that will be using you and your community for something that benefits them. And you'll have content creators that will treat other content creators as threats and as competition instead of, you know, if you have two people who might have similar interests and might have similar humor and similar games that they like to play, they might get along fantastic. That community might grow even more because they have a chemistry in how they interact with each other, you know. And I'm not speaking specifically like romantically, I'm talking chemistry with like how some friend groups will just click really, really well, and some friend group activities will be really entertaining to watch because you're seeing different personalities work really well together. But at the same time, you can also have those groups where like somebody just doesn't mesh well because they're trying too hard, or they're just not, you know, they're more introverted, so it's really hard for them to be as outgoing as the other outgoing people in it. And that's kind of one of the risks that you take. But the thing is, it's like, if you were doing content by yourself all the time, you're never going to make friends. You're going to eventually get lonely and bored. And it makes sense to want to make friends with other content creators, and you'll click really well with people, but you'll also realize that some people are not who they're pretending to be. And therein lies the typical point of, okay, well, I thought I knew this person, but they're not who I thought it was. How do I distance myself and my community from them and still maintain a professional, civil kind of interaction with them? And sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And that's other sides to the stress that a content creator might have, because they might choose not to do content with somebody anymore because their communities don't mesh well together, or if they themselves don't mesh well together, whatever the case might be, you're not going to get along with everybody, and that's okay. But you have to still be an adult about it. And if you don't agree with someone, you can still be civil with them and just, you know, smile and nod like you would in a hall and walk about your business.
Managing a Discord, you're moderating a community, you're answering messages and reaching out to developers and other creators. You're trying to be entertaining, and you're also trying to be a normal human being with a life outside of the internet. And eventually, something has to give. And some of the newer research around content creation and the creator's mental health is pretty sobering. A 2025 study from Creators for Mental Health and Lupiani Insights and Strategies, covered by the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, found high rates of anxiety, depression, and burnout among surveyed digital creators. The study also reported that 10% of creators surveyed said they had experienced certain thoughts that I can't talk about on YouTube related to their work. It's not a statistic I want to sensationalize. It's actually one of the reasons I think we need to take creator burnout seriously. Because we sometimes treat this job like, oh, you're just playing video games on the internet. How hard can that be? And yes, sometimes we're playing video games on the internet. But there's a very real amount of emotional, social, financial, and creative labor happening behind that screen. And when you combine that with an audience that feels entitled to your time and your emotions, the job can become extraordinarily difficult to sustain. And that's basically where I've been. I'm not going to give you a play-by-play of what happened because there are people involved who deserve their privacy. So let's not make any comments down in the comment section about it. And honestly, I don't think turning every personal conflict into content is healthy. We're not in high school, guys. I will say this though. I reached a point where I realized that the way I was interacting with y'all, with my community, it wasn't sustainable for me anymore. I was trying to keep too many people happy. I was trying to maintain a culture that had shifted and it had changed. I was trying to figure out what the community wanted while simultaneously trying to figure out what I wanted. And eventually, I didn't know anymore. I just knew I was tired. And when something you genuinely enjoy starts feeling like an obligation, when every time you go to hit the start streaming button, you cry for 30 minutes beforehand, when you start wondering, was any of it worth it? That's a warning sign. And it was a big flashing warning sign. So I stepped back. I've taken some time away and I've been contemplating things about what I actually enjoy making, about what I want my community to look like, and about what boundaries I need to set if I want to continue being in the content creation space. And honestly, I had to think about what I'm no longer willing to sacrifice simply to keep everybody comfortable and happy.
And what's heartbreaking about this is you can hear her, you can hear the pain in having to explain this and stuff. And the thing is as a content creator, we do care about our community. We care about our friends. We care about the people we interact with on a regular basis. Some people might be parts of our lives more than our our husbands, our wives, our parents, our kids, whatever the case may be. Although you should never have your kids have less time than you're streaming, I'm just saying. But my point is that she's absolutely right. And the thing is there's a difference between wanting to make people happy and realizing that that's an impossibility, and having a community that takes advantage of its content creator. And there are a lot of people that I feel got into content creation for the right reasons, and there are people that I feel got into content creation for the wrong reasons. And I feel like the ones that are wanting to entertain people and bring joy to people's lives, those are the right reasons. But the people who are wanting to farm attention or wanting to make drama for the sake of making drama, the people who are miserable that want everybody else to be miserable as well, that's not going to be sustainable. And there are content creators that are like that literally go about instigating people because that's how they get content and things like that. That's not a sustainable thing. It just isn't. At the end of the day, it just isn't. Because there was a video I saw not long ago that there's a lot of mean girls. And I guess you could say mean boys, but mostly mean girls. There's a lot of mean girls in the VTubing community, and it's true. And part of it has to do with that mean girl mentality also is the same as the high school mentality. And when you're somebody in your 20s and you're still, I understand it. You're recently out of high school. Usually you're in college. You're still kind of figuring yourself out. It might not be something you've grown out of. You should still work on growing out of it, but it might not be something you've grown out of it yet. I can give grace to that. But when you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, and you're acting that way, grow the fuck up. And I'm not saying this about her. I don't misunderstand. My point is I have seen content creators that have decided to move on from the things that they used to love because the toxicity of the community and how they are treated, whether it's their community is toxic toward them, whether other content creators are toxic to them, whatever the case might be. And at the end of the day, you have to realize that VTubers in general, I've only just recently learned, we're a small niche. So we really need to stop tearing each other apart. And we need to stand up for the things that are wrong and point that out. And we need to support people who feel like they're in this situation where their community, their own community is dragging them down because they're just trying to make people happy. You know? So if you're somebody who sees if you're somebody who watches a content creator and you see a community abusing their content creator, fucking stand up and say something. If you're doing it, knock it off. That's not okay. But if you see a content creator that you look up for and you admire and you enjoy their content, you have to be willing to stand up for them if their own community is dragging them down underwater. And if you are truly a fan of that content creator, you want what's best for them. And being abused by their own community is not what's best for them. A content creator should not have to feel like they need to take a break because their community is wearing on them. Their community is taking their community is take. As a content creator, we're still only one person. We're still only one human being trying to entertain so many people. And it's not easy. It's not something that's going to make everybody happy, and that's okay. But you also have to stand up for the people that you claim to support. And if you don't, that's why people leave. That's why content creators give up. That's why people decide that they don't want to do it anymore. And they might just grow out of it too. They might have been doing this for years and years and years, and it's not the thing for them anymore. And that's okay too. The only thing I say to that is that content creator has a responsibility to at least explain that they're moving on with their lives and, you know, thank their community for, you know, being a part of their lives for all that time and not just disappearing off the face of the earth. Like, we're not going to talk about that. But at the end of the day, if you're holding your own content creator hostage, you can't be upset when your content creator decides to leave. And if your content creator decides to leave, then you're just going to end up having to find somebody new. And if you're not learning from those experiences and realizing that the expectations that you are placing on somebody are unhealthy, all you're going to do is keep repeating that cycle and you'll never learn. And I hope people learn. I do.
I think creators have to learn something that is incredibly uncomfortable sometimes to think about. Your audience is allowed to be disappointed. They're allowed to have disagreements with you. They're allowed to leave. Mm-hmm. They're allowed to decide that your new direction just isn't for them. Mm-hmm. And that honestly doesn't mean that you or them did anything wrong.
Yep. It's okay.
You are
not the end of the world.
Change. You are allowed to say no. Mm-hmm. You're allowed to take a break. You are allowed to stop doing something that makes you miserable and uncomfortable. You are allowed to change your rules. You are allowed to change your content. You are allowed to disappoint people. And the most important thing, you are allowed to be your own person.
You're allowed to be yourself.
There's
ideally.
A strange expectation online that if someone has built a community, somehow that person belongs to that community. The community gets the final say.
Nope.
But appreciation does not equal ownership. Mm-hmm. Being grateful doesn't mean being available 24/7. And having a community doesn't mean surrendering your boundaries and your happiness and your life or your health to it. And I want to say something to the viewers too, because this isn't entirely a creator-made problem. If you are watching someone and you genuinely care about them, I think that's wonderful. Viewers are absolutely the backbone of the community. But the healthiest way to care about a creator is to allow them to remain a real person. Let them change. Let them take breaks. Let them make something that you don't like. Let them say no. Let them have their life that doesn't involve you. And if you don't like where they're going, that's okay. There are millions of creators on the internet for you to choose from. Find someone whose content makes you happy. You don't have to stay. And the creator does not have to become someone else to convince you to stay. This is the boundary. I don't know exactly what the next version of my content is going to look like. And honestly, I am okay with that, if I even keep creating content. I think part of stepping away has me realizing that I don't need to have every single piece of this thing figured out immediately. I don't need to recreate exactly what I had before. I don't need to force myself back into a schedule just because that's what I was used to. I can build something entirely different, something that feels sustainable for me, something that feels more like me than I feel like I've been in a very long time. And maybe that's been the real lesson here. Sometimes you've got to tear down part of the community that you built, not because it was all bad, but because you as a creator have changed. And the next thing that you build needs to fit this new version of you.
I would also go as far as to say that sometimes you have to tear down pieces of something in order to make room for something more. Like, I'll use a house analogy. If you have a house that's a one story house and that house needs to expand because your family is growing, you sometimes need to take down pieces of it to grow it, to be able to house the new family that you're growing. Sometimes you need to rebuild something to make it more sustainable, more um to be able to fit your new growth, and that's okay. But at the same time, sometimes you need to destroy the parts of your past and the parts of your community that are not healthy, that are not working for you. And that are not working for you. And the thing is never, ever, ever feel guilty about realizing that maybe sometimes you have to get rid of toxic influences in your life, whether that's your community in some cases, whether that's pieces of, your group of friends, whether that's, a game that's just not bringing out the best in you anymore. That's okay. Because at the end of the day, you are still a person. And if you are miserable, it will reflect in how you are with your community and the people who consume your content.
That you are now. So that's where my head's been. Not because I hate having a community. Quite honestly, it's the opposite. I love the idea of having a community. I love people finding friends. I love people having somewhere to go. I love creating something that gives somebody a reason to smile for a couple of hours. But I've learned that I can appreciate my community without belonging to it or being beholden to it. I can be grateful without being constantly available. And I can care about people without becoming responsible for how their emotions come out. So sometimes you have to take a step back, and sometimes you've got to change things, and sometimes people are going to be disappointed. And sometimes, apparently, you have to build a maximum security prison in Pal World to process the whole emotional roller coaster of an experience. Honestly, I'm calling that cheaper than therapy.
I will say, having not gone through exactly the same, um, I'm gonna touch bases on the Miko drama very, very briefly. But for people who remember, everything that happened with the broker drama, it tore down a lot of the foundation that I thought was more solid than it was. Um, People turned out to be what I did not. People turned out to be not who I thought they were. People kind of sided with the broker. But at the same time, the toxicity that was removed from that, and there were some toxic clouds in that community. But at the same time, some of the friendships that I've made still to this day came from that community. And I cherish those people with all my heart. I would fucking fight to the death for these people because my friends are important to me. And I'm somebody who I do try to do my best to give people the benefit of the doubt, to give them tries over and over and over. But at the same time, there's only so much you can do when the ground is rotting beneath you. And sometimes you have to just tear it all down to start over. And there's so many of us who, with everything that happened, had to rebuild from scratch. And it was hard. It was fucking hard. But those people have grown stronger together as a group because either they were personally affected by it, with having to get new models, having to get new designs. And as you well know, I love my harpy design. My artist is amazing, and I would give Vine my kidney. I love her design. um but like, there's a lot of people who really are really, really happy with their redesigns and stuff that came about because of this situation, and they're happier for it, absolutely. But months ago, they were under a great deal of stress. They were under a great deal of anxiety because it was something that was still fresh and new and had to be, you know, torn down to the foundations to be able to rebuild. And that's okay. It is perfectly okay to move forward when something like that happens. And unfortunately for content creators, not just with our community, but with each other, that can happen. And sometimes when people make separate paths, when they go separate ways, it's better for them, whether they realize or not. It could be better for them in the long run, because sometimes you have to learn to be able to be on your own 2 feet before you can actually be self-sustainable. You know what I mean? um so yeah, sometimes you just have to be willing to rebuild something to make it better.
Anyway, I hope this gave you something to think about, a little reassurance that I'm okay. Whether you are a creator or someone who spends a lot of time in content creation communities, I think that boundaries are something that we all have to learn, because at the end of the day, there's a real person on the other side of that screen. And they deserve to be one. And with that, I am going to stop talking about serious stuff. You have listened to me ramble long enough, so enjoy the rest of this prison build, and maybe I'll see you in the next one. If not, that's okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and end that there. But yeah, I make memes of myself sometimes. But yeah, so we're gonna minimize that. Okay. But yeah, whoops, let me fix myself. Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's something that is very important, and people kind of need to kind of, number one, go support her. Absolutely. I will have the link to her video in here. The first 30 minutes, we basically just watched it. The rest of it is just her building the base and some music and stuff. So, but yeah, give her a follow, watch her content, she, that kind of thing. Support creators when they need that kind of support, but also, this is a good lesson, and I hope that people take those points to heart. And I don't mean just for content creators, I don't mean just for communities, but in general, how you are with yourself, how you are with your community, and how you are with other fellow content creators. Because at the end of the day, we are all human beings trying to figure our fucking shit out, and that's okay. So, on that note, that's all I have to say on this. I've already gone on for, I think, an hour. We're not going to talk about the fact that this has been like 3 tries of me trying to do this, but yeah, I'm going to go ahead and post this up. And in the last bit of it being that the whole reason I decided to do this was to talk about, my year in a recap. So I'm just going to go over that. But I did my little Google document basically about this. And the general idea, I talk about when I started VTubing, the reason I started VTubing, how the atmosphere and how the community was at the time. Because I kind of started paying attention to VTubing mid 2025. I started actually streaming August 2025. I got my first model in like September. And this month, technically August, is my 1-year anniversary. I was planning on having my 2D model ready and everything, but it's still being worked on. But basically August, September is my 1 year. And this is the things that I've learned in the last year. I've come a long way. I've learned a lot of things. I've learned not to be as naive with people. I've learned to kind of try to recognize patterns, and I've learned to, at the end of the day, I've learned that if I'm not happy, my community is not going to be happy. My friends are not going to be happy. My coworkers are not going to be happy. And I'm just going to continue to be myself. And there's going to be people who like that. There's going to be people who don't. And that's perfectly fine. If my loud, brash, obnoxious self is not your cup of tea, that's perfectly fine. There are plenty of other people out there for you to enjoy content from. But I'm not going to minimize myself or how I am as a person for other people. That's never been how I am. That's never really been how I can be. And speaking from an experience of having to do that for almost a decade as a domestic violence survivor, I will never do that again. So, that being said, we will go ahead and end that here. Please feel free to take a look at my Twitter if you want to read my year in review conversation, which was inspired by that video. But otherwise, I will see you guys on the next video. Bye-bye.